What's up, guys? Chasing up New Age Revolution out here at the compound, at the ranch, if you will, for a very serious episode of the TN80sR half-hour power hour. That's right, we have had a very special episode with Mrs. Rev on the show. But tonight is going to be labeled a very serious episode of the half-hour power hour, because my man Champ Vincent, and I do believe it is the official Champ Vincent, he sent three very serious questions. Three very serious, three very personal questions. And it's all stuff that I've very loosely, very casually mentioned on the show over the years. And the fact that he remembered some of the stuff that I very casually and very loosely mentioned. The fact that he remembered it and was just curious about the details of a few of these serious topics that he wanted to know, that he asked. And of course he prefaced his questions with, you don't have to answer any of these if you don't want to. And I appreciate that. And of course when we created this show, I said, ask away, fire away, give me the questions. They don't all have to be about toys. And that's why we're sitting out here instead of sitting in the fun, cave. We're out here on the ranch. And if you hear some clanging in the background, it's my gate just banging in the wind. But anyway, so let me read to you the email. And then we'll get going. We'll jump right into a very special episode. Very special was before. A very serious episode of the TN80sR Power Hour. Champ Vincent says, your station, I love that, your station continues to be the best on YouTube. I know. Thank you for all the work you do to entertain us. I do have some questions, but they are pretty heavy. Please don't feel the need to answer these if you don't want, and I hope they don't bring up bad feelings for you. Question number 1. He says, you've mentioned growing up with your sisters on past episodes. I believe one of them passed away about 6 years ago. If I'm wrong about any of this, I apologize big time. And I was wondering how you were able to deal with the loss, and did it change your perspective on anything in life? So that's question number 1. The next two are just as good. Yes. So I have 2 sisters, both younger than me. One was born in 1978, and one was born in 1981. 80 or 81. And that was, so my sister Jody and my sister Julie. Jody was born in 78. Julie was born in one of the 2 years, 80 or 81. I think 81. And, yes, Jody died 6 years ago in May. In fact, we just had, it's just been 6 years this past May. And full disclosure, she died from an accidental drug overdose. And both of my sisters have had problems with substance abuse. My youngest sister had more of a problem with substance abuse. My middle sister was, look, I'm in the substance abuse and mental health field. I own, like you actually buy it, but I have a substance abuse and mental health counseling practice. I've been doing that for about 20 years, and So when I say this, know that it's coming from an experienced point of view. But my middle sister was more of a dabbler with substances, narcotics mainly. So your pain meds, your opiates, and probably some benzos as well. And if you're not familiar with benzos, I'm talking about Xanax and Klonopin and Ativan and Valium. And she had a bad night one night 6 years ago. Nobody ever really knows what happened, but the story is that she, was having some relationship problems and maybe got into an argument with her boyfriend that day, and wanted to, I guess, unwind, maybe. And now this is all assumption. This is all assumption with a relatively intelligent experience base. My guess is that she wanted to pretty much enjoy her evening, and I think she went out to get a handful of pills, and she got her. I think she probably expected, some Vicodin, but she ended up getting something called Opana, which is a almost unprescribed med, and a non-prescribed opiate. You don't really see Opana in the market anymore. And I don't think she knew what she had. Opana's really, really, really heavy. And I don't think she knew what she had. And she took it. And I'm sure she took a few other things. And I'm sure she had a glass of wine. And I'm sure she settled into bed for a getaway. And she didn't wake up. And that's that. That's how that life got snuffed out. She mixed a few things that she shouldn't have. I think she was uneducated, and she didn't wake up. It was by no means intentional. My sister lived for her children, and there was no way that she would have intentionally done this to herself. So yeah, that's how that happened. The question was, how did you deal with it, and has it changed your perspective on anything in life? I dealt with it. I don't know. I guess like everybody else does. It was shock. It was it was sadness. There's a lot more to the story of grief and how we dealt with it, but I had to break the news to my younger sister, and they were very close. I don't know how I dealt with it. I learned how to coexist without her. It's horrible, but you continue to live, and you continue to exist and do well and laugh and enjoy and things like that when you're ready. So that's where we're at 6 years later. Did it change my perspective on life? Probably, sadly, no. I think whenever there's a tragedy like this that hits somebody's family, you have like what I call like the funeral conversations with people about, we're going to get together and we're going to do this, and we're going to, you're talking to third guy, I did the same thing. You're talking to second and third cousins at the funeral, and you're like, Next week we're going out to dinner. This is crazy. We got to be a family, and everybody's on board, and then never happens. And you say things. This is going to be a change, and this is going to, and it doesn't change anything. So did I gain a new perspective on life? No, not yet. Hopefully I do at some point. Hopefully something good or positive, I guess, comes out of this. But no, I still make the same dumb mistakes every day and the same dumb decisions, and take things for granted. We never learn. Humans never learn. All right, so that's question one. Question two. You also mentioned that you lived with your grandparents at one point. What were the circumstances that caused you to live with them rather than your parents? Looking back, are you at all grateful that it played out the way it did? My parents got divorced when I was 8, and me and my two sisters lived with my mom. And my mom was not the breadwinner of the family, to say the least. I don't think she knew how to make the bread. And so I think she tried to maintain some kind of a living, but it usually came from stepfathers or a stepfather. So they got divorced when I was 8. She struggled. She did the best she could, I assume. And we eventually moved a lot. So life was really good up until 8. My sisters and I were all three of us were going to Catholic schools. We lived in that glorious childhood home in Chilai. We were just your regular. We had all the makings of that regular suburban '80s family, and I was having a blast. And then the divorce happened. I'm just checking the time on this. 15 minutes, okay. Then the divorce happened, and we left the childhood home about 6 months after the divorce. And my mother had a boyfriend, and we moved into a house with him, and that lasted about 6 months. Then that relationship ended. Then it was on to an apartment, then a new relationship. Then she ended up marrying that guy and having 2 more children. And I think that was a B. And then that relationship kind of faltered. But it was around that point that I moved in with my grandparents. My grandparents, so I was the firstborn, and my grandparents, Jesus, this really is a bee that keeps bombarding me. My grandparents claimed me as their own right from birth. I was my grandparents' favorite person in the world. When I was 3 months old, my grandfather, he worked next to a sporting goods store in 1977, 1976. And the story is that my walls were filled with sporting goods of all kinds. My grandfather went nuts and bought me hockey sticks, baseball gloves, footballs, all sorts of stuff was just all over my walls. At the time, my grandfather had a connection to the Rochester Red Wings, which is the AAA affiliate. It was of the Baltimore Orioles. The Red Wings still exist. They're not with the Orioles anymore. But at one point in time, my grandfather was connected to that group and would get me autographs when I was 6 months old of every AAA Red Wing player. And there ended up being some huge names. And Cal Ripken Jr. Came to my first birthday party. At the time, he was playing with the Orioles in 1977 or something. Yeah, 1977. And so Cal Ripken Jr. came to my birthday party. I don't remember it. But anyway, that's the story. So my grandparents were infatuated with me from birth. I was their person. they loved my sisters, but I think they loved me more. And so I would spend a lot of time with them. And if you watch some of the LJN videos, I talk about how responsible my grandmother was for that collection. And we tell the Toys R Us steel cage story and all that stuff. But so, I'm about 12, 13, 14 years old. And, I'm just in that stage. I'm a jerk. And I'm just not getting along with the stepfather. And I don't know. It just got to the point where my grandma, my grandparents and my mom talked, and they decided that it would be better for me if I lived with them. And I went for it. And I remember I was upset about it for about 3 hours. I went there. I moved in. I remember I was sitting around my room pouting and stuff, and my grandma came in and said, do you want to go to bingo? My grandma was a bingo player, and she said, you want to go to bingo tonight? And I was like, yup. And I was happy ever since. It was the best move I've ever made. My sisters spent time, my mom and the stepdad got divorced. My mom met a new guy about 2 hours away, moved in with him. My sisters split time between my mom and my dad. It was a mess. And I had the stability of my grandparents. I had the stable home. I had the stable upbringing. Dinner on the table every night. Everybody sitting around the table eating, me and my grandparents. They provided. They had rules. And my grandparents are the reason that I didn't go off the deep end. My grandparents are the reason that I didn't get into drugs. They're the reasons that I didn't start drinking. And they're the reason I went to college. They're the reason I performed. And if I didn't have them, I don't know where I'd be. I probably would have had the same tendencies that my sisters did. Probably. So, yes, it worked out perfectly. My grandparents were my favorite people in the world. And I lived with them until I was about 23 when I met my wife. I moved out when I was 21 because I was a big shot, and I worked in the mall, and I made $19,000 a year. And I thought I was a millionaire. And so I moved out and I got an apartment, and I failed after 6 months. I got fired from the store, and I had to move back home. And of course they were like, yeah, great, let's do it. And I remember at one point, I was about 22. It was probably the year before I moved out for good. And we were sitting around the dinner table, and there was a family across the street that had an older kid living there. He was probably in his 30s. And we were talking about him, and I was kind of making jokes about him. And my grandparents were like, well, what's wrong with living at home forever? And I was like, a lot, like that wasn't, but my grandparents would have kept me forever, had I lived there, or, my grandmother would do my laundry till the day I moved out, fold my underwear, have it all stacked neatly on my bed. When I was partying and coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning, there'd be a plate of food waiting for me at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, it's not your usual drunk, stay out all night food of choice. But I would come home, and there'd be, a pork chop and some mashed potatoes and some corn all wrapped up on in aluminum foil. The best. And they started getting sick in 2009. My grandmother started getting sick. She had cancer that spread to her brain. We found out that she had cancer in January of 2009, and she was dead by March of 2009. And my grandfather died 2 years later of cancer as well. So 2011 was the year that I had no more grandparents. The third and final question says, you've been in the mental health field for a couple decades, helping others find ways of coping with stress, addictions, etc. For the professionals in that field, where do you guys go, or who do you talk to in order to make sure you are doing well with your own mental health? Or are you able to or are you able to sort of help yourself based on your expertise? Yes, yes to both. I've learned over the years how valuable it is to not take the stuff that I hear daily home with me. It would Your brain would literally leak out of your ears. It would, if you didn't figure out how to let that stuff go. So I've just been able to do that over the years anyway. Who do I talk to? Honestly, this. I don't come home and talk about my day. I can't. There's privacy things that I'm not allowed to talk about stuff, and I wouldn't anyway. I'm not the kind of guy who comes home and hey honey, how was your day? And then I sit down and talk about it for hours. I don't do that. I've never done that. Work doesn't exist inside of my home. But 5 years ago, I started sitting down here and chatting it up with you guys, and that's changed the game. I don't have a friend group. Like I said, like I've said before, I have a couple of, as my kids get older and they get friends, then you start to become friends with their parents by default. And there's a couple of people that we're closer to than others as far as kids, friends, parents. Are they my go-to people? Are they my best friends? No, not at all. I had a friend that we would hang out a lot, but circumstances ended that years ago. But 5 years ago, I met a whole bunch of you guys, and it's more than that. It's like, if I didn't do the YouTube channel, my room, sadly, I probably wouldn't visit it that much. I don't have a lot of time to just go downstairs and just sit around and look at my stuff. I'd still be collecting, but I don't know where I'd be at 45 with the cave if it wasn't for the channel. So the channel and the conversations with like-minded people and the gatherings and the Steel City Con and getting to know people personally, and G.I. Joe Ron coming to my house and bringing birthday presents, and hopefully seeing a few of you at Steel City Con, and getting together with Upstate Johnny at RetroCon in September. That's my therapy for real. That's the good stuff. So I think if you're in the field and you take on a lot of this trauma from other people, it's called vicarious trauma. If you don't purge what you hear, then you go insane. It's like a firefighter, it's like a police officer, it's an emergency room doctor or nurse mainly. The people that are constantly exposed to trauma, if you don't do something with it, then that trauma becomes your trauma, and then you're in trouble. But after 20 years in the field, I am nowhere near burnt out. I am revitalized, actually, after going into business for myself. So yeah, you take care of yourself, and you guys and this channel are responsible for that. You are the reason that I am. You are my outlet. You are my outlet. This collection is my outlet. This community is my outlet. And sitting around and chatting with you guys, that's my outlet. So how about that? That's Champ Vincent's 3 serious questions here on a very serious episode of TN80sR Power Hour. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a little more about yours truly. We will be back and go through the questions. They're all still hanging. If you've asked a question, if you've asked one, if you've asked 30, they are going to get read. Don't worry. I haven't, we're not skipping anybody. So, yeah, so that's that. No more bees. That might be a bee. That's a fly. All right. We'll sign off from the ranch, and I will see you all hopefully tomorrow when a very special item comes in the mail. That huge pickup. That perfect pickup that I've been very excited about. Didn't come today. It was supposed to come today. Didn't come today. We'll see y'all next time. Good night.